The Loop on Highway 9. I think I accidentally drove out of reality, and I am terrified to get back in my car. It was a Tuesday, about 11:30 p.m. I had stayed way too late in my classroom. I teach middle school, and the grading was piling up so badly that I just needed to knock it out. By the time I finally locked up my classroom, the entire building was dead silent. Just the hum of the fluorescent lights in the hallway. The drive home is usually a therapeutic 40-minute straight shot down a totally dead highway. I plugged my phone in, put on some old-school rap just to keep my energy up, and hit the road, totally cruising on autopilot. About 15 minutes into the drive, a faded red sedan passed me in the left lane. It was moving a little fast, maybe 80 miles an hour. I only really noticed it because of two things. The right taillight was flickering like a strobe light, and there was a massive, unmistakable crescent moon-shaped dent on the back bumper. I watched it speed off into the darkness ahead of me and went back to zoning out to the music. 10 minutes later, headlights approached in my rearview mirror. They got closer, pulled into the left lane, and passed me. It was the exact same faded red sedan. Same flickering right tail light. Same crescent moon dent on the bumper. I reached over and turned my music off. The silence in my car suddenly felt heavy. My heart started doing that weird flutter in my chest. I tried to use logic. Okay, maybe there was a turnaround. Maybe they forgot something, looped back, and are heading home again. Except, there are 0 exits on this stretch of highway. It is a straight line, completely bordered by thick pine trees on both sides. There was nowhere for that car to have turned around to get behind me again. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles turning white. I stared at the dark road ahead. 5 miles went by, then 10. I started to convince myself I was just exhausted, hallucinating from staring at rubrics and essays all night. Then, my rearview mirror lit up again. I didn't want to look. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to just stare straight ahead. But the car pulled up directly beside me in the left lane, and it just stayed there. It didn't pass. It matched my speed perfectly, pacing me at exactly 65 miles an hour. I held my breath, slowly turning my head to look through my driver's side window into theirs. There was nobody in the driver's seat. The car was totally empty. The steering wheel wasn't moving. There was no glow from a dashboard. It was just a hollow metal shell gliding down the highway in the dead of night, pacing me perfectly. Panic hit me like a physical punch. I slammed on my brakes, swerving hard onto the gravel shoulder. The red sedan didn't stop. It just kept gliding forward until it disappeared into the dark. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely grab my phone. I opened my GPS, just needing to see a map, needing to know exactly where I was so I could call someone. The map loaded. The blue dot pinged my location. I wasn't on the highway. The map showed that I was sitting directly in the middle of the school parking lot. I slowly looked up from my phone, out my windshield. The dark highway and the pine trees were gone. I was parked right where I had started, staring at the dark, locked front doors of the school. My car was still in park. The engine was off. I had never left. But my gas tank was completely empty. The 3 a.m. check-in. Working the night shift at a hotel will make you question your sanity on the best of nights. But what happened to me last November made me quit on the spot. I was working the front desk at a quiet, mid-tier hotel right off the interstate. Around 2 a.m., the automatic doors slid open and a guy walked in. He looked completely exhausted, late 40s, wearing a damp gray raincoat, carrying a faded leather duffel bag. He walked up to the desk, handed me his ID, and said, "Reservation for Miller. Just one night." I checked him in, handed him the key card for room 214, and watched him walk to the elevator. Normal transaction. Nothing weird. Exactly 1 hour later, at 3 a.m., the automatic doors slid open again. I looked up from my phone and my blood ran cold. It was the exact same guy. Same damp gray raincoat, same faded leather duffel bag. He walked up to the desk, looking just as exhausted as before. He handed me his ID. Reservation for Miller. Just one night. I just stared at him. I asked, "Sir, did you get locked out of your room?" He looked at me like I was crazy. "What are you talking about? I just drove 4 hours from Chicago. I haven't even been to a room yet." My hands were shaking as I pulled up the system. The reservation for Miller was still showing as checked in. Room 214. I physically handed him the key an hour ago. I tried to explain this to him, but he was getting angry, insisting he just walked through the front doors. To prove it to him, I went into the back office and pulled up the security camera footage from 2 a.m. I watched the timestamp hit 2. The automatic doors slid open on the screen, but nobody walked in. The camera showed me standing at the front desk, talking to thin air, handing a key card to absolutely nobody, watching an invisible person walk to the elevator. I went back to the front desk. The man was gone, but sitting on the counter was the key card for room 214. I walked upstairs to check the room. The door was wide open, the bed was made, but laying right in the center of the pillows was a damp, gray raincoat. The impossible floor plan. My girlfriend and I just bought our first house. It's an older build, maybe from the late 70s, but it was cheap and we figured we could renovate it. That was the plan, anyway, until we started measuring the walls. We wanted to knock down the wall between the living room and the kitchen to create an open concept. To do that, my girlfriend went outside to measure the exterior dimensions of the house, while I stayed inside to measure the interior rooms. When we sat down at the kitchen table to compare our numbers, they didn't add up. The outside of the house was 40 feet wide. But when you added up the width of the living room, the hallway, and the kitchen, the inside of the house was only 32 feet wide. We checked the math 3 times. We remeasured everything. We even checked the blueprints from the county. There was a massive 8 by 8 foot block of space in the direct center of our house that simply didn't exist from the inside. There were no doors leading to it, no air vents, just solid drywall. I grabbed a sledgehammer from the garage. My girlfriend was begging me to just leave it alone, but I couldn't. I had to know. I found the center wall in the hallway, swung the hammer, and smashed a hole right through the drywall. It was dark inside. I shined my flashlight through the jagged hole. It wasn't empty space. It was a perfectly preserved room. There was retro, floral wallpaper on the walls, a pristine shag carpet. But that wasn't what made me drop the flashlight. Sitting in the center of the hidden room was a small wooden table with a single chair. And sitting on that table was a cup of coffee. Plumes of fresh, hot steam were rising from the mug. Right as I saw the steam, I heard the undeniable sound of a chair scraping against the floor from inside the walls. We left the house that night, and we are currently staying at my parents' place. The house is back on the market, and I am never going back inside to patch that hole. The Lupin Apartment 4 Bay. I stayed in an Airbnb in Seattle a few months ago, and I am entirely convinced the building I was in was not part of our reality. It was a studio apartment on the 4th floor. The first weird thing I noticed was the window. It looked out onto a busy intersection. At exactly 5:15 p.m., I looked out and saw a woman in a bright yellow jacket drop her umbrella in the crosswalk, pick it up, and keep walking. At 5:30 p.m., I looked out again. The exact same woman in the yellow jacket dropped her umbrella, picked it up, and kept walking. I sat by the window. Every 15 minutes, like clockwork, the street reset. The same cars drove by. The same woman dropped her umbrella. Freaked out, I grabbed my bags, walked out into the hallway, and headed for the elevator. When the doors opened on the ground floor, I stepped out, expecting to see the lobby. Instead, I was looking down the exact same 4th floor hallway. I turned around and took the stairs. I walked down 4 flights of concrete steps, pushed open the heavy fire door at the bottom, and stepped out. I was back in the 4th floor hallway, right in front of apartment 4B. I tried everything. I tried calling 911, but my phone just played a dial tone. I knocked on the neighbors' doors, but it sounded hollow, like hitting a solid block of concrete. I was trapped in a loop. Finally, in a state of absolute panic, I went back into apartment 4B and looked out the window. It was exactly 6 p.m. But this time, the woman in the yellow jacket didn't drop her umbrella. She stopped in the middle of the crosswalk. She slowly turned around, looked directly up at my 4th floor window, and waved. The moment she waved, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was an alert. "Welcome to Seattle. Checkout time is 11 a.m. tomorrow." I ran to the door, threw it open, took the stairs down, and finally ended up in the lobby. I didn't stay the night. I don't know what happened in that apartment, but I know that whatever was controlling that street finally decided to let me out.